Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. This is a non-judgmental place to explore spirituality, and we're so glad you're here. This is a viewer and listener-supported podcast, so we greatly appreciate your support. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, share, and subscribe to any of the social media content platforms that you're using. And then if you go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, you can make a one-time donation, or with a monthly subscription, you'll gain access to our bonus content. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. We're glad you're tuning in on this episode, and I will introduce our guest in a minute, but I want to mention right off the top of the hour here to check out Theology Beer Camp. One of the largest sort of progressive Christian podcasts in America that is like a theological nerd paradise. It's for theological nerds. It's called Christianity, or Homebrewed Christianity. Trip Fuller sponsors that. And he is putting on Theology Beer Camp this October, and it's in Springfield, Missouri, just a couple hours away from Kansas City for all of those who are listening in the Midwest. But I'd like to invite you to come out. There's going to be about 20 podcasters, about 20 theologians. There'll be some musicians there. Derek Webb's going to be there. Let's see who else. Trey Pearson, a couple of different musician folks. And this is theology that's not boring. I promise you. This is a rambunctious crowd, fun theology. And let me encourage you to join us. You can go to my website, spiritualityadventures.com. And there's a link there so that you can sign up for Theology Beer Camp. You can use the code Spirituality GodPod and get $25 off your ticket. And book a room down there. There's already a handful of people that I know that are joining me, and we're going to have a lot of fun over a 3-day period, October 19th through the 21st. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. And today I'm excited to introduce you to Nick Laparra. Nick and I just actually recently met in this last year. We hung out in Telluride, Colorado over Memorial Weekend at the Mountain Film Fest. And I had a blast hanging out with Nick and the whole crowd. One of our common friends that introduced us is Rod Colburn, and Nick is currently in Harlem right now. Well, are you in Harlem? Located in Harlem right now?
I'm actually downtown Manhattan right now, Union Square right now.
Downtown Manhattan. And honestly, Nick has an amazing story. So I'm excited for him for you to get to know him, hear his story, his background, and then what he's doing now. He actually hosts a podcast and does a bunch of humanitarian work and is a speaker, activist, and his podcast and activist stuff that he does is called Let's Give a Damn. Let's Give a Damn. So welcome, Nick, to the podcast. Thanks for joining us at spiritualityadventures.com.
So happy to be here, Fred. Thanks for the invite. And I will say that meeting you in Telluride, of all places, of all backdrops, it's a great place to meet people, because you can't help but feel great about the people you're with, the food you're eating, the films you're watching. It's just a beautiful setting. So it was great to meet you. So much fun.
And my new friend, common friend, was the master chef, right?
Samir Selmanovic. Yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That was a treat.
The food was incredible. I mean, it felt like we were, eating Michelin star food every day in our little rented cabin.
Yeah. The little rented cabin, right? Yeah. I think Rod was thinking, I bet you this thing was an $8 million cabin or something.
It was massive.
It was amazing. All right. Well, give us some of your background. Like, where did you grow up? Give us your family background, your spiritual background. Kind of give us a feel for Nick and his growing up years.
Thank you for asking. I was born in upstate New York, Rochester to be specific. My dad is a Guatemalan immigrant, came to the US when he was a kid. My dad actually was fleeing. So I moved to Guatemala when I was a kid. When I was 9 years old. When we moved there, it was the tail end of a 40-year civil war that began when my dad left as a kid. So he left a war. He left because of the war. So technically he was a war refugee, but leaving sort of the violence that was happening in Guatemala. And then I moved later on in the last 3 years of that war. So very interesting sort of timing and parallel there. But I was born in upstate New York to, my immigrant father and my Italian-American mother in Rochester, New York. I'm one of 12 kids. I'm the second oldest, so I'm near the top. And my brother was, I always joke, and he's in on the joke, but my older brother, the oldest, was not really present for most of the years where he should have been taking care of us and taking responsibility as an older sibling. He was off chasing girls and doing a lot of things he shouldn't have. And so I had to assume so many of those responsibilities. So I felt like the oldest most of my life, which was fun. I like those sorts of things. One of 12 kids. I grew up in a very fundamentalist, conservative Christian environment. My dad grew up nominal Catholic. So did my mom. And he was evangelized to by a very fundamentalist, conservative Christian. And it was a point in my life when my dad had sort of hit rock bottom. And so he was desperate for help. And this guy was there really preaching a gospel, not a joyful gospel, not a free gospel full of freedom, but one of, here are a lot of rules. Here are the things we must do and say and not do and not say, and how to dress and how to do this and how many times going to church every week. It was that sort of a gospel that my dad was introduced to. And for some reason during that time in his life, like he sort of got lured in. And so the upbringing was quite unpleasant in so many ways. One of the key parts of my upbringing, and my dad is thankfully a changed man now, but growing up, he was quite abusive because he grew up being abused. And then when you are brought into a community or a cult, I should say, that isn't pursuing, isn't wanting to see you change, isn't wanting to see you become more like Jesus, but rather just obey the rules and kind of fit into the system that we've created. They didn't care about the anger issues he had, the trauma that he had experienced, and what that would mean for his family. They just cared, are you wearing the right clothes? Is your hair short enough? Are you listening to the right music? How many times you go to church this week? And so what that resulted in was a pretty abusive environment for us to grow up in, physically, verbally, emotionally, and spiritually. Again, I always want to caveat or add that he is not that man anymore. Thank God. Things are totally different. I'm very proud of my father for the changes that he has made. And I'm very proud that he gets to be a grandfather to my kids now. But back then it was not so pleasant. So that sort of shaped a lot of our upbringing because there was just a lot of fear. I've always been quite the big mouth, saying things that maybe I should not say in certain situations. And so I got the brunt of a lot of the abuse because while my other siblings learned to stay quiet, to slink off in the shadows and stay out of his destructive path, I always put myself in it for some reason, which meant that I just got knocked around quite a bit more than the others. But later on in life, it became apparent why that was. Like I'm a lot like my dad. We do a lot of the same things. We think a lot of the same ways. And so I guess it was natural that we were always butting heads and getting in each other's ways. But I also remember a lot. I remember, if anyone's listening and had sort of an abusive upbringing, maybe you'll identify with this, maybe you won't. We all still found moments where I still have very fond memories. There was a lot of joy at the same time when we weren't walking on eggshells and when there wasn't abuse around us. There were a lot of great pizza movie family nights. There were a lot of great trips that we went on. There were a lot of hugs and kisses from my dad. There was a lot of joy in our family, despite whatever percentage of time that we had to walk on eggshells. Maybe that was a survival tactic that we sort of deployed to like stay sane. Like, hey, we've got to find the good stuff. But yeah, there were still so many great moments. I wouldn't trade my upbringing. So I was in Guatemala from 9 to 19. We moved there as, unfortunately, it wasn't for a really great reason. It was to become evangelical missionaries, which really meant that we ended up hanging around for 10 years with a lot of white savior mentality missionaries. And we became that. That was the work that we did, was really bringing American evangelicalism to the already amazing, completely fine on their own Guatemalan people. So I regret that. I regret being a part of that. It was out of my control, but I don't regret it all growing up in Guatemala. It was very hard. It was difficult. Like I said, we were there during the tail end of a 40-year civil war in the late 1990s. And I guess that's implied, just the 90s. I don't have to say 1990s. In the late 90s. We saw a lot of violence growing up. I unfortunately have seen people murdered right in front of me. I've seen people get kidnapped. I was telling Fred earlier that there was a kidnapping attempt on my brother and I. It was a very interesting upbringing, but I grew so much during those years. I became strong, resilient during those years. I can put up with a lot of crap because of my upbringing. And I don't wait around for permission. I think because of my upbringing, if I want something, I go and pursue it. Even if I fail at it, I go. I'm not waiting for anybody to tell me I can or cannot do that. It was a beautiful, I'll end there and let you ask any questions, follow-up questions you have. But it was a beautiful, hard upbringing, which really is, I mean, that's humanity, right? Like right. We have our ups and our downs. And again, now I will just wrap up by saying this. There have been suicide attempts in our family among my siblings. There have been divorces. There have been substance abuse. There have been all sorts of issues that one would have with 12 kids and 2 parents that grew up in an abusive environment. But all these years later, my family, my like close nuclear family is now 33 or 34 people. All 12 siblings are still alive and well. 8 are married or have partners now. There's 11. We have 11 kids amongst us, and that number is growing. And once or twice a year, we all get together, all of us, to hang out. And we can hang out. We have political differences. Upwards of half my family voted for Trump at least once in the last 2 election cycles. We have how we raise our families differences. We have all sorts of differences. But through that crazy journey of growing up overseas and the coming back to the States and all of that stuff, the ups and the downs, the divorces, the losses, we have stuck together. So that's why I can't regret anything that ever happened, because it got me here where I can call my dad now all these years later and we can talk and we can laugh. And he asks me for advice. He calls me one of his most trusted confidants. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, you used to beat me and I used to hate you. And now we're here. We're friends. We're friends. He's 65. I'm about to turn 40 and we're friends. Like it's quite the miracle.
Yeah. So despite all of that, that environment of abuse, you still ended up adopting some of those evangelical beliefs. Is that right? And felt called in some way or another to be to be in ministry or a pastor.
Yeah.
Give us that. How did that next phase of like embracing the evangelical ethos, get involved in evangelical ministry, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't take it. When I said earlier that I grew up in a cult, I mean that in almost every sense of the word, because what you're alluding to is so many people would have, should have, did leave their faith after experiencing so much abuse in the name of faith. And because it was sort of a cult-like mentality that took me years to get out of, I didn't think leaving was a possibility, because there was nobody telling me that it was possible. We had walled off all the corners of our lives that would have allowed any outside exterior voices in. So even once I started leaving and like trying to get out of what I was experiencing as a kid and as a teenager, I still didn't think, like, to me, it was like, okay, that was bad. That was shitty. That was not okay. But like, there's got to be a better version of it somewhere. So I didn't leave. I just tried to find a better version of it. And that's really what I left home. I left Guatemala at 19. And from 19 to very early 30s, so about 12, 13 years, it was a series of decisions and moves and jobs, mostly in ministry, that were me trying to find a much better version of what I experienced growing up. That includes, working for, probably the longest stint that I had was working for 4 years with a pretty unknown person named John Piper. I spent 4 years in Minneapolis. So right after getting married, I got married when I was 25. She was 21. And we moved to Minneapolis because at that point, again, in my mind and in my heart, hey, John Piper, this joyful gospel that John was preaching was the way out of what I was experiencing, which felt like very constricting, felt very tight, felt very like I can't get out of this. It felt like desiring God and John Piper was an answer to that. Maybe not the answer, but it was an answer. And that was right around the time that I started reading John's books. The one that impacted me the most, even though I have completely 100% left that theological framework behind, there's a book that changed my life that he wrote called Don't Waste Your Life. He meant something different by don't waste your life. But what I took from that is I've only got one shot at this. And I'm not promised the next 5 minutes. I could fall dead during this interview. None of us are promised the next 5 minutes. So that idea of don't waste your life radically changed my life. Still to this day, I have John to thank for that, because that came at a very pivotal moment in my life when I needed to realize that not 1 minute goes to waste. I've got to be intentional about how I live my life, which again, years and years later, became one of the foundational reasons why I formed Let's Give a Damn. But I spent 4 years in Minneapolis at Bethlehem Baptist Church, at Desiring God, producing their conferences, helping make their content. I was leading worship at Bethlehem Baptist Church. I even preached one time with John Piper on the front row in the audience. I was an elder in training. Like I was in. People were very surprised at how quickly I got in. And I just assumed at that point that I would continue to go down that path. And that was my new world. This was my new existence. It felt free. It's not free. I can say that clearly now in retrospect. It's not a very freeing theology or way of life. But at the time, it felt much more free than what I was experiencing. We ended up leaving there and moving to just south of Seattle, Washington, to another church planting network ministry group called Soma. But the thing that led to that move was me realizing, alongside my partner, Rebecca, that it just felt like these people here at Bethlehem, John Piper, Desiring God, like they just it's all about learning new stuff. It's all about reading more books, learning deeper theology. Those of you that are listening can't see like my arms, but I got my first 2 tattoos, which were 2 Bible passages in Greek and Hebrew right on my forearm, because it was such a world of like, learn more, go deeper. But I never saw anybody take anything they learned and actually went out there to like hang with people, to like help our unhoused neighbors, to feed people, to care for immigrants. I never saw that happening. It was just learn more, consume more, go deeper, but they never actually did anything with it. And I know I'm being very exaggerative there. I'm sure some little things were happening, but by and large, if you went to the schedule for the church every single day, from sun up till sundown, it was class after class after class. You'd have soccer moms learning Greek and Hebrew. Like nothing wrong with a soccer mom learning Greek and Hebrew, other than that soccer mom probably her time would have been spent more wisely actually hanging out with her mom neighbors, or the moms of the kids at the school, or the dads, like hanging out as families versus like learning more Greek and Hebrew. So I left that environment, thankfully, and moved to Washington State to work with a group called Soma. And Soma felt a little more free, but it ended up being just a beer drinking, cigar smoking version of Desiring God. The bill of goods that they were selling was like, we go out there and like, we go make disciples. We go out there and we be the light of Jesus to these people, but it still had the same legalistic mentality. And it was very up until that point, all the groups I was changing. So part of me was changing. I was reading books. I was getting to know people. I grew up in a very homophobic, sexist environment. And I felt myself becoming less sexist and less homophobic, but the environments around me were not. And I would say the homophobia that I saw now at Desiring God, it was very blatant. It was, if you're gay, you're wrong, period, full stop, beg God to change you. At Soma, it was less of that. It was more like, hey, we're cool with you. Like, come hang out with us. You can be in our small groups and this and that. But the trap door at the back was like, but at the end of the day, we hope you repent of the sin of homosexuality, right? But it was very backdoor. It was like, let's drink and let's eat and let's hang out first. And then we'll try to convince you that the way that you're living is wrong. And I started waking up to the fact that there's zero wrong with, like, who you are is who you are. Whether you're straight or gay or whatever it is, like, you are, like, God loves you just as you are. So I had to get out of that environment as well. So that led me, after 3.5 years there, we moved, and we're inching closer to the current day. We moved to Nashville for 4 years, and that was to be closer to family. We didn't want to move to the American South, but that was like a cool city, right? Quote unquote. That was the coolest city in the South that we could still, like, yeah, it's a blue dot in a very, big sea of red. So we'll move to Nashville, and it was there that two things happened. One was it was there that I tried to leave my faith altogether. I threw away hundreds of books because I didn't want anybody else to read them. I tried to leave. Like, there was all these like R.C. Sproul and John, and I was like, I don't want to give these away because this is bullshit. So I literally would I destroyed them, and for the next two
it's
years,
a book burning.
Hopefully I saved some minds and hearts and lives that way. But I tried for 2 years to leave my faith, and Fred, I couldn't. Like, I tried. I don't know if I was seeking to be an atheist or an agnostic, or I just wanted to leave the Christian faith altogether, because I had seen, and this was around the time. So this was, to put a timeline on it, this is 2016, 17, 18. Something big happened in 2016 that really, we don't have to get into that because that would be another hour. But some big stuff happened 2015, 16, 17 that really made me want to leave the faith altogether. I was so happy to find a small Anglican parish in Brentwood, Tennessee, just south of Nashville. Father Danny Bryant was the parish priest there. And Danny has become one of my closest friends. And Danny saved my faith life.
Huh.
Because Danny...
Tell me his name again.
Yeah, Father Danny Bryant at St. Mary of Bethany Parish.
Because this is where you also met my colleague from years ago, Todd Hunter. Is that right?
Yeah. So Todd eventually moved from California to Nashville, and St. Mary's has since then left the ACNA for a lot of reasons. I'll just leave it at that. But in St. Mary's taught me I'll tell this quick story and then I'll wrap up and you can ask any questions. So I'm trying to leave my faith. We moved to Nashville, obviously like the belt buckle of the Bible Belt. I mean, churches on every street corner. I mean, there's just faith stuff and Christian stuff everywhere. You can't go into a coffee shop without hearing, Christian radio blaring. Such a weird environment to live in and to exist in. And all the churches that I've been a part of were very loud, very intense, 45-minute sermons, big music, big noise, big everything. Everything was big. Everything was loud. And one of my friends said, hey, you've got to, I know you're feeling this and that way about your faith, but you've got to go check out St. Mary's in Brentwood. And so I went down there one Sunday afternoon. They had their mass at 4 p.m. And I walk in, and I've never felt this in my life, Fred, but I felt peace on my skin. Like I felt it on my body. I've felt peace before, but I felt peace. And for the next hour and a quarter, it was just this incredibly beautiful, peaceful, meditative sort of, Sunday mass. And again, I had always been around these like big mega church, like very alpha male types, right? Always got something going on, get with my secretary, she'll schedule you, right? That sort of environment. And so I went up to Danny after the priest, he's greeting people at the door. And I said, Danny, we're moving to Nashville. A friend recommended I come here, really enjoyed it. We'd love to get coffee and just hear your story and get to know you and how St. Mary's came about. And I fully expected Danny to say some version of, hey, what's your email? I'll have my secretary get in touch with you. And then, I would wait 3 days. The secretary would get in touch with me and she would say, 2 weeks from now, Danny can meet for 30 minutes on a Thursday, right? Like, cause that's how it had been for all of my life. And Danny, there was no secretary. There was no assistant. It was just Danny. And he said, how's tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.? And I literally started crying right in front of him. And he was like, what's going on? And I was like, you don't know what that means to me. You don't know what that means to feel like seen on the first try, not down the road, not once I've done a bunch of shit for you and worked tirelessly volunteering, but like right away, you have no idea who I am. And you want to have coffee with me like 16 hours from now? Blew my mind. So that began the next phase, which we can wait, a bit to talk about, but that began the next phase of my life which was the last 5 years, where I began to reframe what it means to be a person of faith, sort of try to reclaim some of what MAGA culture and white evangelicals had taken from this true faith that Jesus left us. So that's been the last 5 years, which is a whole other episode.
Wow. Was your wife tracking with you basically at the same speed of evaluating all of that? And then
not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. The short version of that is that she got equally hurt and burned by the church. She has very little interest in being a part of it anymore. She still wants there to be something there. And she still believes in God and knows that something bigger is happening in the universe. But she's not convinced that any of us are getting it right. And so, for example, a lot of my work still is interacting with very progressive churches, but with very progressive leaders of faith. Even in those circles, she's just not that interested. And I'm totally fine with that. As a now, hopefully lifelong universalist that is going to work with all kinds of people of faith, because I believe we're all headed to the same place. In this current framework, I have no interest in trying to convince my kids of anything. I still teach them if they want to know what I believe, and I still teach them good things, many of them being principles of faith. But I just have no interest, Fred, in trying to, pull my partner and my kids along in this thing. Like, I'm where I'm at. I'm actually, by this time next year, I'll be, even though I'm a very, very provocative, progressive person, I am currently in the process of switching from the current denomination that I'm ordained in to become an Anglican priest. And so in about a year, I should be an Anglican priest, not to oversee any specific congregation, but for whatever percentage of my life, to be able to lead people in that way while still doing all the let's give a damn stuff. But that wasn't your question. My wife is not tracking, and I'm completely fine. No, she is tracking, but she's in a whole different place than me. And we have lots of conversations where we're like, we're good. Everybody good? Okay, cool. And our relationship is stronger than ever since I stopped trying to convince anybody, especially my life partner, to like be on the same page as me. I'm just not interested in that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you go through these kinds of, sort of major reorientations in life, and you're married and you have kids, that's such a challenge, especially if you're not moving together. It can be kind of interesting and challenging and stuff like that. But so let's jump in to maybe give me one or two key philosophers or theologians that influenced you into this to where you're at now. Like when you met Danny, and then you're rethinking your faith. Who are a couple of people that influenced you to kind of move you to where you are now? And then let's talk about moving to New York, starting let's give a damn. Let's start getting into some of your current passions. Yeah. But give us who influenced you.
Two people. Danny, I will say, of someone that I know and can talk to anytime, Danny Bryant has changed my life. Danny loves Jesus and loves the world.
Nick, look who's calling me right this minute.
Rod, leave. We're trying to talk here. That's amazing.
Let me see if.
Hey,
Rod.
Is this Colorado?
I'm sitting in your house right now doing a podcast interview with Nick Laparra.
You are interrupting our podcast, Rod.
This is live. This will come out on the podcast now, Rod. So we have to keep it in. Listen to one podcast in your life with me and Nick.
I'll do it.
All right, we'll call you back.
I'm having dinner with Nick
tonight.
Yes, I'm going to see Rod tonight here. Yes,
well,
Upper West Side.
Dang, over, I need to join you. Right. I'm having dinner with Howard and Chris tonight.
All right.
Look at all these great connections. Love Howard and Chris.
All right. Take care.
Give them my love.
All right. Bye. Sorry.
That's amazing.
Folks. That's our common friend, Rod Colburn, who lives in Manhattan. Nick lives in Harlem. I'm sitting in Rod's place near Telluride right now, doing a writing retreat. I've been writing for 7-8 days in a row, but wanted to get doing this interview now with Nick. So anyway,
and I'm going to see Rod tonight along with Doug Padgett. We're having supper at I talked about Georgia earlier in the other questions that you asked earlier on, Eastern Europe, Georgia, not Marjorie Taylor Greene, Georgia. And we're actually going to a Georgian restaurant tonight before they go to a Jackson Browne concert. So a lot of great connections here. I'll see Doug here in a few hours.
Sweet. That'll be fun.
So the two that come to mind right away, besides Danny Bryant, are Dorothy Day and Wendell Berry.
Oh, wow.
Dorothy Day is Dorothy Day is, if I have a patron saint, it's Dorothy Day, who was a Catholic, socialist, anarchist, like just a badass theologian, living Jesus and theology out loud here in New York City, just loving people in extraordinary ways. So Dorothy Day is a massive example for me. And Wendell Berry, whose career started in New York City as a high-powered businessman, and then gave all of that up to go live an agrarian life in rural Kentucky. Wendell has taught me so much about, as someone who loves the city and loves the concrete. Like I would any day of the week, if you say, let's walk through the most amazing woods, or let's walk through the most amazing forest, or let's walk through Manhattan, I'm going to choose Manhattan every single day. I love cities. And I know that there's a part of me that I'm still unleashing and letting go, because I think every human has it, that connects so deeply with nature and needs it to live and needs it to thrive. And there's nobody, in my mind, nobody alive that teaches us better how to connect with the grass and the sun and the wind and the plants and the leaves and growing our own, fruit and produce than Wendell Berry. There's no one that connects me to the earth more than Wendell. And so I would say if there's, two people, Dorothy Day and Wendell Berry and Father Danny Bryant.
That's awesome. That's all. It makes me want to dive in more. I've read, from both of those and loved it, but I haven't done a deep dive on either one of those two people. So cool. I love that. Okay. So you move when did you move to Harlem?
We moved to New York City, to Manhattan, specifically to Harlem in early 2021. So we were supposed to move in early 2020, and the month we were supposed to move was when the pandemic happened. And obviously, for anybody paying attention, New York was the epicenter of the COVID virus for the first few months. So it would have been very foolish / damn near impossible to move to New York City in those first few months. So I'm glad we decided, man, I think maybe we can do it. We decided not to. That was a great decision. So we waited till the next end of the school year to move. So we've been here for 2 years and a few months.
And your podcast is called Let's Give a Damn, but you do not just the podcast, but humanitarian work. Give us kind of a picture of what you're doing now through Let's Give a Damn, what you've done up to this point, but also where you see it headed.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So when Trump was elected in 2016, that's when I started Let's Give a Damn, partially because he was elected. But I had just left my first career was 15 years in the nonprofit / ministry space. My last gig ended in I left it in 2016, and really with no plan and not that much money in the bank, because nonprofit. A year before that, when I was still squarely in that last job, I woke up one morning and the phrase "Let's Give a Damn" was on my mind. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it would become. I had no idea why the hell it came there, but it was there. So I got the social media handles, bought the domain, and let it rest. Just let it marinate for a year. I had no idea what it was going to do. I leave that job in 2016. That's also when we moved to Nashville. I had to figure out how to make money, and also, but even more than that, because I've never, more than the money was, what am I supposed to do right now? What is the universe needing me and wanting me to do right now? And so I'd always been a fairly solid communicator, a great question asker. And so I decided at that point, hey, a very cheap way to make content would be to do a podcast. And this is before every other dude had a podcast out there. This is, 7 years ago when I decided to start formulating this plan. So I hired a producer friend of mine, and I started asking a few friends that were damn givers. And I define a damn giver as someone who lives an absurdly intentional and ethical life, someone who is trying to be fully human. That's a damn giver. And so I found a few damn giver friends, and I started interviewing them. And again, at that point, it was just like kind of a hobby, but also to figure out what I wanted to do next. Early on in that process, one of my friends asked their friend and the co-founder of their company, Rainn Wilson, who has now become a great friend and mentor, and I love Rainn and his family. But, at that point, this was just a few years after The Office was over. So it's still bigger than ever, but it was, Rainn was very much a household name. And she asked Rainn if he would come on the podcast. So this was this is in the first 10 episodes, very early on. So I flew out to Rain's house in LA. We did the podcast. It was super fun. Rain was like, anything you need, like, I love what you're doing. Let me know if I can help. So that having Rain on in the first like 10 episodes really helped me from there on out I'm a pretty convincing person anyway, but that really helped me pitch some bigger guests from there on out. Fast forward to now, we've got 260 episodes, actually 258 releases today, with two moms in Tennessee that are part of an organization that's fighting against Cameron Sexton and the Republican caucus, that are actively stopping bills and measures that will legislate great, gun safety and gun legislation. And so that one's coming out today to talk about the whole special session that Governor Bill Lee called, and that's out today. So 258. Along the way, early on, probably in the first 30, 40 episodes, I realized this is something. This is more than just a podcast. And so I started really bringing all of the work that I was doing under the Let's Give a Damn umbrella. Up until that point, I was doing a lot of consulting and coaching, marketing, storytelling, branding, communications. I was doing a lot of that, and I decided to bring all of that in-house. And so for the past few years, it has been me mostly failing and sometimes winning, trying to figure out what this Let's Give a Damn thing is. I actually listened to a podcast yesterday between Rich Roll and my friend Baratunde Thurston about real community versus audience and storytelling. That is absolutely flipping my world upside down right now and making me realize some of the very evident, the very clear ways that I have not built like proper community over the past few years. So like, I'm currently like, this is a great and a terrible day to catch me because my brain is all over the place. Like I feel like I went to bed last evening feeling just very like existential dread. Like what did I waste the last 6 years of my life building it this way? And I haven't, and it's all a great journey. But I'm currently rethinking a lot of things right now based on that conversation. But over the past few years, yeah, I still do a lot of coaching and consulting under Let's Give a Damn, helping. I have consulted with Fortune 500 companies and CEOs and CMOs and entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders to help them think more critically and intentionally about their social impact. I've spoken on a lot of great stages around the world. Very honored to do that as well. And then more recently, as I said, said early on, as I'm currently pitching a few TV projects with a few different amazing groups that have asked me to pitch stuff with them. So I'm currently working on 2 unscripted TV projects and 1 scripted one. Who knows if they'll go anywhere? But that is taking up a bunch of my time and giving me a lot of joy because I think there's something there. But yeah, and trying to build, again, the last sort of arm of Let's Give a Damn that I'm currently still trying to figure out is like the consulting's great, the podcast is great, working on TV projects, that's all fine and dandy. But my goal, like I still haven't achieved what I want to do with Let's Give a Damn, which is to build true community. And by true community, because I have an audience, but I don't have a community. And that is enabling people. Like a community is when people can start doing things on their own. Yes, there's an attraction point. They're all railing around Let's Give a Damn and trying to have a greater impact. But true community comes when I can not even be the central focal point and people start doing stuff and they start giving a damn and they start helping each other and they start mobilizing all on their own. That's, I think, when you know that you've kind of sort of formed a true community. And so I'm working on that slowly but surely.
Cool. What's the name of the person that Rich was interviewing? So
Rich Roll podcast, Baratunde Thurston. Baratunde wrote an amazing book called How to Be Black. He also used to work at The Onion. And now he has his own TV show on PBS. He has a great podcast that you need to listen to called How to Citizen. Citizen is a verb, and which I agree, like to be a citizen, that like citizen is a verb. And so How to Citizen is a great platform that does, it's a similar to Let's Give a Damn. We're trying to help mobilize people toward action. So definitely check out How to Citizen.
Okay, cool. So when you go out and speak, I was looking at your website, you've got a few topics that are kind of near and dear to your heart. Of course, how to give a damn, how to live a meaningful life, power of less, first in, last out, laughing loudest. These are some of the things.
That's a leadership talk. That's a leadership talk based on a phrase from the Chronicles of Narnia. There's a phrase in there that the king talks. He's describing a leader. He's describing a king, which I believe is a leader, and it's the first one in, the last one out, and the one that helps people laugh the loudest. That's what a true leader is. So I developed a talk around that.
I like that. Yeah. So you've had some big guests on your podcast too. I noticed, you've talked about Chelsea Clinton, but you also got to do an interview with Matthew McConaughey. I just finished his Green Lights memoir, because I'm working on a memoir, and I was trying to, go through a couple of them that, just to try to see how they did it. And that kind of, that was really fun. He's got such a fun personality,
Definitely. Yeah. I've had the privilege. I find myself sometimes look in the mirror and I'm like, man, you're so lucky. Like you're the son of a poor immigrant that grew up with nothing, no connections, no anything, grew up outside the country, came back and had nothing to go off of. And here you are, like, talking to these just really incredible people. Chelsea's become, a friend. I've interviewed her I'll see her again this next month are we in September yet? No, at the Clinton Global Initiative here in New York, and always love connecting with her. And yeah, Matthew McConaughey, Priyanka Chopra Jonas, incredible, best-selling authors. And it's been really fun to, the reason I have them on, yes, it's fun to talk to them. Don't take me wrong. I love talking to these people. I love to have them on so that more eyeballs and ears come into my sort of ecosystem, so that when I bring on someone that doesn't have a platform at all, but should be well known because they're incredible and they're doing amazing work, there's more people listening to their story. So yes, it's fun to talk to Priyanka Chopra Jonas, who has 200 million social media followers, right? Like that's amazing. She's one of the most famous people on the planet. And really my goal there is to make sure that so-and-so, Alexis Paulson, who's on the podcast today, no one knows the name Alexis Paulson, healthcare worker in Tennessee, fighting to keep her children and the children of the Republican, politicians alive and away from gun violence in Tennessee. Like I want the Priyanka fans to know Alexis Paulson. Like that's why I do it. But it is, obviously it's fun to talk to these people. And I have some great shows coming up that are with other, well-known people. It's fun. Yeah. It's been a blast. 258 episodes.
Yeah. Cool stuff. So I'm kind of curious, what you say that you're thinking about community in a different way right now. And you gave a couple of thoughts there. When people start really taking some of the impetus of what you're caring about, their communities, their people, what does that look like? Because I'm a community builder. I always have. I was a church planter. I helped plant churches around the country, around the world, and I'm still building community myself, right? And I'm also rethinking community through new lenses. And I'm curious, where do you see that going from where you're at right now? Like because you just said, have I wasted my last 6 years? Of course you haven't. But what would the next 3 or 4 years look like based on these thoughts that you have about community?
That's a great question. And everything I say right now is going to be very, very ill, formulated, because I'm just now thinking about a lot of this based on, not just the conversation with Baratunde, but other conversations I've had with mentors recently. I think one of the things that would change, honestly, if my knee-jerk reaction is to stop basically everything I'm doing and just focus on building the community. I'll tell you why right now, but I have so many other things going on. The consulting, the coaching, the speaking definitely can be community building, but there's all these even the pitching TV shows. I'm not going to I'm not going to build a real, genuine, robust community by by Netflix picking up a show that I do someday. Like that'll spread awareness about Let's Give a Damn and what I'm doing. But I really think one of my favorite parts of the conversation with Baratunde that I listened to yesterday was him talking about how Barack Obama indirectly taught him about community back in, when he was doing his campaign leading up to the 2008 election. Barack was the reason that people were gathering, right? They wanted to see Barack become president. It was so exciting to think about Barack being our first Black president, right? So that's why people initially came. He's charismatic. He was bringing people around this idea of, yes, we can. And this idea of this could be the first Black presidency. Like there was so much hope and so much joy, but that wasn't community. People just rallying around Barack Obama's not community. The real community was Barack he still had to do his campaign and do the talks and whatever. But Baratunde talks about how during that year of campaigning, of canvassing, of meeting other people online and in person, that they would go around and knock doors and leave flyers. The real community happened when they started doing stuff with each other and for each other that had nothing to do with Barack Obama's presidency or the potential presidency. They started dreaming together, him and random strangers that he would meet that were also on the campaign trail. They started coming up with their own dreams and ways to, maybe this law, maybe this thing. How can we get energized and get people going in our communities? They lived states apart and they started dreaming and forming. So it was no longer about Barack Obama. It was no longer about 2008 campaign. It was now about these two people, these 3, 5, 7 people that were meeting each other in person or online. Initially, it was about Obama. And now it was about what are we going to do together? And so the way that I'm thinking about that with Let's Give a Damn is I have built, you can build a community or you can build an audience. I've built an audience. I'm not saying it's only one direction. I do get feedback. You mentioned Howard, an amazing 80-year-old retired doctor that lives in Colorado. He listens to every podcast and every single week he sends me feedback. And Howard's not unique. I get that in DMs, I get that in emails, I get that in text. So it's not a one-way street, but it's still not a community because I have not built mechanisms, built a structure so that these people, because my ultimate goal, I don't give a shit if they ever listen to me again. That's not the goal. I'm not the primary thing here. I want people to go out there and live today as if it's their last day on earth. I want them to take every opportunity and run with it. I want them to think about death every day and the fact that we could die today. And since we might die today, let's go help people. Let's go love people. I want them to start doing that all on their own. And I haven't created mechanisms for them to connect, for them to get into each other's lives, for them to do that work all on their own. Because I can't show up every day and keep like patting them on the back and encouraging them to keep going, right? That's impossible for me to do. I could do that for a few people, but not for the hundreds of thousands that I want to impact in my lifetime. So that's the real main thing, Fred, that I'm seeing is like, I've created an audience and it's great. And I love it. And people seem to want and need what I'm sort of bringing to the table, but I'm not happy with that. If I have a TV show and a top podcast and a lot of money 5 years from now, but I haven't built true community, I will have failed, I think. So I'm sort of like going back to the drawing board. Maybe I pitch the TV shows less. Maybe I, pull back on the consulting or the coaching where I only get to impact a few at a time. And I need to just focus on, that's not bad, impacting a few at a time. But I want to go further. I want to go deeper. I want to create mechanisms. I don't know what that is. It's an app. It's a platform. I don't know what that is yet, but I need to figure out how to allow people to self-actualize, to self-organize in this work of giving a damn. And I haven't done that very well yet.
Okay. So this probably our last question, but like if you had to, and I kind of hinted at this when we were at the Wild Goose Festival, if you had to pick 3 or 4 or 5 issues that would be your top, and it could just be 1, 2, or 3, but however many, 3, 5, the number doesn't matter, that you feel like are like some of the most important issues on our planet today for people to give a damn about? What would some of your top issues be that you would, if you could mobilize people to give a damn about X, Y, and Z, what would be some of your top issues?
I'll give 2.
Okay.
And I think they're the most important ones. Number 1 is I want people need to figure out how to be around people they don't agree with and have hard, important conversations and not try to force their way of life and their beliefs on other people. Forcing anyone to do anything doesn't work. Even trying to persuade someone to change what they believe and to head in a different direction also doesn't work. Very, very, very rarely. What does work is modeling for people what it looks like to live the good life. Showing people, yes, I know we have to speak up. Yes, I know I'm not opposed. In fact, I do it a lot. I'm not opposed to making people feel uncomfortable if I think that they're doing something wrong and harmful. But I see my role, I see all of our roles as we are harm reducers. So whether it's the food we eat or the ways we get from point A to point B, how we travel, the clothes we wear, the big issues in society, I believe we all should be trying to reduce as much harm as possible. We live in a world. There's a lot of crazy shit going on, so we can't eliminate harm. Very rarely can we eliminate any kind of harm, but we can reduce it. And the reducing harm is going to come by modeling for people instead of trying to push our beliefs on other people. So that is kind of an overarching big thing that I give a damn about, that I want people to give a damn about, because that's where it all starts. Because you can care about the climate, you can care about supporting the queer community, you can care about gun safety, you can care about all of these things. But if you go about it wrong and you just get on Twitter and you keyboard warrior your way into arguments with trolls, and you get on your bully pulpit and you just scream at people about how horrible they are and how wrong and backward they are, that convinces no one. So essentially what I'm saying is like peer pressure. Like we got to become way better at peer pressuring people by modeling what the good life looks like to help people change. So that's number 1. Number 2 is an issue, and that is the issue of climate change. I believe we are in a climate emergency. It is absurd to me for anyone to push back on that, not because I said it, but because we are very clearly in a climate emergency. The weather patterns are off the charts crazy. We keep experiencing hotter summer after hotter summer. There are weather events. We just had the first one in 90 years, hurricane off the West Coast, very common, in Florida and South Carolina and Georgia, completely rare and uncommon in, places like California. We have all of these weather events that are happening that very clearly show that we are in a climate emergency. So the reason I believe this is if we're going to name one issue, that working on the climate crisis is the most important, because if my children and their children don't have a habitable planet to live on, it doesn't matter what you think about guns or about queer people or about racism. It doesn't matter. None of those matter. Not one other issue matters if we can't live on the planet that the universe and God has so graciously gifted us. So we've got to, along with the other issues that we care about, please care about all the things. But along with that, you have to figure out what your role in slowing down this climate crisis is. And the most important ways that we can contribute to that are not using paper straws. It's not even to recycle. It's not any of that stuff. Most of the damage being done to our climate is being done by megalomaniacs, billionaires, people in power that run companies that don't give a shit about our planet. They're doing it at a massive scale. The deforestation happening in the Amazon right now. our planet cannot keep up with the fast pace of the deforestation happening in places around the world. Those are the things. So we're talking about voting. We're talking about working on electing people that do give a damn about our climate crisis. Yes, make the changes in your own life. I'm vegan mostly because of the climate, actually. I'm not saying don't do those things, but I'm saying we got to figure out the most effective ways in our lifetime to slow the climate crisis. And along with that, listen to anything that Bill McKibben has to say. Bill is a legend in the climate space. He'll be on the podcast soon. But yes, we don't have much time left. And I don't want to live on a planet where we've made a lot of progress when it comes to gun reform, but we can't actually live here. Like that's a wild future to picture. So those are the two issues that I would bring up.
Yeah. Good stuff. My gosh. Yeah. I loved hearing Bill McKibben out at the film festival and at Wild Goose. Man, so challenging. I'm trying to figure out how, just with this new community that I am pastoring, how can I integrate that into, conversation and challenging people with that kind of worldview. I think a lot of people just, they don't realize the crisis we're in.
Not at all.
Well, good stuff, man. Nick, thank you so much. I've enjoyed connecting with you, getting to know you, hearing your passion. I love the fact that you're still hanging in there with some of the Jesus crowd.
I am. I'm trying, Fred. I'm trying.
And my story. I really felt I spent a lot of months feeling like an atheist and questioning everything I'd ever believed, and have been reemerging in a lot of different ways myself, but still kind of hung on to Jesus and still care about the planet, the world, still love people. I love the no harm idea, living our lives in ways that we can not do harm to one another, not do harm to the planet. And I love, period. And I know you've been hanging out a little bit with Jackie Lewis at Middle Church. And man, if we could do no harm, love, period, and influence
the world changes, man. If we do those, 100%.
Absolutely. I'm on board. So I'm thankful for the connection we've had. Thanks for coming on Spirituality Adventures. For those of you who made it to the end, thanks so much. I'd encourage you, if you haven't already joined our team, our Patreon team, support team, go to spiritualityadventures.com. Check that out. Become a part of our support team. We had a great interview prior to this that we put out of bonus content, and had some fun insights into Nick's life as well. So thanks for joining us. Thanks, Nick, for being a part of this. And I hope to see you before the end of this year in person sometime. So
thank you for inviting me. And yes, before the end of this year, come to New York. We'll treat you right.
Around. You'll have to. I don't smoke that many cigars, but I'll walk around and smoke a cigar with you just to hang out.
Let's go.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in to Spirituality Adventures. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Nick. Have a great day. Tell Rod and Doug Padgett I said hello tonight.
I will. Peace to you and peace to all.
Take care. See you next time, everybody.
This concludes today's episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Remember to like, share, or subscribe to the social media platform that you're using. And then go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, and make a one-time donation, or you can subscribe monthly and receive our special bonus content. Thanks so much.